Hello, I'm Sarah. We begin with a story we think we know. The skyscrapers, the gold, the name in giant letters. But before the myth, there was a machine. And that machine was built not in Manhattan, but in the quiet, neat streets of Queens. It was built by a man named Fred Trump. This is the origin, the blueprint. This is the story of a boy forged inside a system of relentless expectation, a system designed to erase weakness, a system designed to create a winner, or something that looked exactly like one. Our story starts in the post-war boom. America was building. Fred Trump was building faster. He constructed entire neighborhoods, rows of tidy brick houses for the growing middle class. He was a king in a borough of kings. His court was the family dinner table. His law was discipline. His religion was the deal. Fred believed in strength. He believed in leverage. He believed in the cold, hard calculus of profit. Sentiment was a luxury he could not afford. Failure was a contagion to be quarantined. Fred Trump saw the world in binary terms. A simple, brutal taxonomy. There were killers and there were losers. Killers made the rules. Losers followed them. Killers collected rents. Losers paid them. This wasn't just business philosophy. It was the family creed. It was the air his 5 children breathed. It was the only lesson that mattered. You either dominated or you were dominated. There was no middle ground, no safe harbor. Every interaction was a transaction, every person a potential asset or liability. Donald John Trump was the 4th child, the 2nd son. He arrived in the summer of 1946. Fred Trump's empire was solidifying. The family lived in a large, imposing house in Jamaica Estates. It was a monument to success, but it was not a home of comfort. It was a headquarters. Fred was the commander. His wife, Mary, provided a gentler Scottish counterpoint, but Fred's gravity was too strong. His will defined the atmosphere. Young Donald watched. He learned the performance of power. He saw his father's uniform, the dark, serious suit, the stern expression, the unyielding posture. He saw the respect it commanded, the fear it inspired. He saw the mechanics of control. Fred would take his sons to construction sites. He would point to men laying bricks. He would deliver the foundational warning that could be you. That will be you if you are soft, if you are weak, if you are a loser. The lesson was a scar, a motivation born of dread. Donald's older brother Freddy felt the pressure first. He was the heir apparent, but Freddy possessed a different temperament. He was gentler. He dreamed of flying airplanes. He showed a warmth Fred considered a fatal flaw. Freddy tried to please the patriarch. He entered the business, but he could not become the killer his father demanded. He fractured under the expectation. His struggle was a live demonstration for Donald. It showed the cost of failure within the system. Donald internalized the spectacle. He saw his brother's decline. He noted his father's deepening disapproval. He understood the stakes completely. Survival meant becoming Fred's ideal. It meant amplifying certain traits. It meant purging others. Empathy was a liability. Boastfulness was a strength. Negotiation was war. Every claim had to be absolute. Every victory had to be total. The boy began to craft an armor, a persona designed for one purpose: to withstand Fred Trump. His childhood was a series of small rebellions. He was energetic, combative. He sought attention constantly. He pushed against boundaries. He was not a scholar. He was a performer. He learned early that disruption got results. At the Q Forest School, he clashed with authority. He was the center of his own swirling drama. Teachers found him difficult, unmanageable. The polished world of private school could not contain him. A collision was inevitable. Fred Trump observed his son's trajectory. He saw the raw energy, the unflinching confidence. Even the arrogance had potential, but it was unfocused, undisciplined. It was a wild flame that could either forge steel or burn the house down. Fred decided on intervention, a controlled environment, a place where rebellion would be crushed. where hierarchy was sacred, where a uniform would tell you exactly who you were. The decision was clinical. It was time to send the boy away. The year was 1959. Donald Trump was 13 years old. The order came down from headquarters. The rebellion in Queens was over. He was enrolled at the New York Military Academy, a fortress of discipline 60 miles north of the city. This was not a punishment in the ordinary sense. It was a strategic recalibration. Fred was not discarding a problematic son. He was outsourcing his refinement. He was sending raw material to a factory that produced men. The gates of the New York Military Academy closed behind him. The civilian world vanished. Here the rules were absolute. The hierarchy was immutable. Plebes were at the bottom. They were not individuals. They were a uniform. They moved as one. They spoke only when commanded. For a boy from a mansion in Queens, it was a profound shock. His last name meant nothing here. His father's money was irrelevant. His only currency was obedience. It was a brutal, necessary lesson. He entered as Trump, just another cadet in a sea of identical wool jackets and brass buttons. The academy was a machine designed to break down ego. It rebuilt boys in the image of the institution. Drill instructors were gods. Their voices were thunder. Their eyes missed nothing. A sloppy salute was a catastrophe. A scuffed shoe was an insult. The days were a relentless march of formation, study, and inspection. Personal identity was a luxury systematically erased. But Donald Trump did not break. He adapted. He observed the system with a cold, new clarity. He saw that within this rigid structure, there was still a path to dominance. You could excel within the rules. You could use the hierarchy itself as a ladder. He began to polish his shoes to a blinding shine. He wore his uniform with a sharp, aggressive pride. He embraced the very discipline meant to humble him. He turned submission into a strategy. He discovered the power of the uniform. It conferred authority. It commanded instant respect. When he put it on, he was no longer just Fred Trump's son. He was part of something larger, something with its own history and honor. He liked that. He liked the clear lines, the defined enemies, the visible badges of rank. He worked to earn those badges. He rose through the ranks. He became a battalion commander. He learned to lead. He learned to be followed. The academy honed his natural aggression into a weapon. Athletics became his arena. He was a formidable baseball player, a skilled wrestler. He played with a crushing, relentless intensity. Winning was the only point. Sports were not games. They were simulations of conflict. They were proof of superiority. His coaches noted his drive, his utter refusal to concede. He was building a physical reputation, a trophy case of victories to present to his father. He also learned the art of presentation. The academy demanded impeccable appearance. He took it further. His hair became a project, a signature. Even within military regulation, he found a way to stand out. The famous swoop began here, a carefully constructed statement of defiance within conformity. It was a lesson he would never forget. The package mattered. The spectacle was part of the victory. Perception could be managed, could be weaponized. He graduated in 1964. The transformation was complete. The unruly boy was gone. In his place stood a cadet officer, tall, imposing, projecting a crisp martial confidence. Fred Trump approved. The investment had yielded returns. His son had been tempered. He had been given structure. He had learned to channel his chaos into a quest for rank and recognition. But a deeper change had occurred. Donald had not just survived the system. He had reverse-engineered its purpose. He returned to Queens with a new blueprint, not just his father's, his own. He understood now that systems were tools, that rules were for other people, that authority was a costume you could wear. The academy had tried to make him a follower. It had instead given him the tools to be a commander. He had seen the mechanics of control up close. He was ready for the next phase. Fred had a plan, of course. College, but not just any college, the crown jewel. Donald enrolled at Fordham University, a good school, a respectable choice. But it was not the destination. It was a waiting room. After 2 years, he set his sights on the ultimate prize, the University of Pennsylvania, the Wharton School of Finance. It was the most prestigious business program in the nation, the gateway to the true elite. Getting in was a feat. His application was bolstered by connections, by his father's donations, by a relentless personal campaign. He gained admission. Wharton was another uniform, another tribe. He was now among the scions of industry, the future masters of the universe. He studied the deal-makers. He absorbed the language of high finance. But he was not a theorist. He was an implementer. He watched his classmates with a calculating eye. He saw their inherited confidence, their easy assumption of success. He wanted that. But he wanted the trophy, not the tradition. The symbol, not the substance. He would later mythologize this period. He would call himself a top student, a superstar. The records do not support the legend, but the legend was the point. At Wharton, he perfected a crucial skill, the art of narrative inflation. Every achievement was magnified. Every connection was gold. He was building the story of Donald Trump. The story was more important than the facts. The story was what people bought. The story was what his father might finally buy too. He graduated in 1968. America was in convulsion. Assassinations, riots, a war tearing the nation apart. The old order was crumbling. But in the Trump family, the path was clear. It was time to go into the business. Fred Trump offered his son a position, a generous salary, a future in the empire. It was the expected move, the safe move. For Freddy, it had been a death sentence. For Donald, it was a launching pad. But he looked across the river. He saw a different skyline. He stood on the shores of Queens. He looked at the glittering spires of Manhattan. His father's world was here. Solid, brick, middle class, profitable and boring. Manhattan was a fantasy of glass and steel. It was the land of celebrities and tycoons. It was the center of the universe. Fred Trump built apartments. Donald wanted to build legends. He didn't want to collect rents from teachers and nurses. He wanted deals with kings. He wanted his name in lights. A quiet rebellion began to form. He joined his father's company, the Trump Management Corporation. He learned the nuts and bolts, the plumbing contracts, the zoning laws, the art of the tax abatement. He was a quick study. He had a natural feel for the leverage, the bluff, but his heart wasn't in the brick. He would drive with Fred into the city. He would stare up at the grand hotels, the sleek new towers. He wanted that glamour, that spotlight. Fred was dismissive. He saw Manhattan as a swamp of overpaid elites and foolish speculation. His business was a machine that printed money, safe, steady, endless money. Why gamble on glitz? The tension between father and son entered a new phase. It was no longer about discipline. It was about vision. Donald was chafing under the legacy. He was grateful for the foundation. But the foundation felt like a cage. He needed a project of his own, a declaration. He found it in Cincinnati, a failing, sweltering apartment complex called Swifton Village. It was 1,000 miles from Manhattan, but it was a chance. Fred provided the loan guarantee. Donald executed the deal. He renovated. He rebranded. He sold it 2 years later for a massive profit. It was his first independent victory, the proof of concept. He had used his father's engine, but had steered the car himself. The profit was sweet. The autonomy was intoxicating. He returned to New York with a new confidence, a new demand. He wanted a piece of the Manhattan action. Fred, ever the pragmatist, agreed to a test. He would back his son, but with conditions, with oversight. The Trump family would invade the island together. Their first target was not a glittering tower. It was a dying hotel near Grand Central Terminal. The Commodore. It was a mammoth, bankrupt relic of a bygone era, a white elephant. Everyone saw a corpse. Donald Trump saw a canvas. He saw a location draped in infrastructure. He saw a city on the brink of financial collapse. He saw opportunity in chaos. He would need every lesson his father ever taught him, every ounce of the killer instinct. He would need the polish of Wharton and the toughness of the academy, he would need to become a new kind of hybrid, a brash outsider with an insider's ruthlessness. The assault on Manhattan was about to begin. The Commodore Hotel was a monument to decay. Its grand lobby was a ghost town. Its windows were grimed over. It sat atop Grand Central Terminal like a stale cake. The bankrupt Penn Central Railroad owned it. The city was bankrupt too. Crime was high. Confidence was zero. The very idea of a revival seemed ludicrous, a fantasy. But Donald Trump did not see the present. He saw the future. He saw a city desperate for a win. He saw a hidden script only he could read. This was his crucible, the project that would define him. It was not about building something new, it was about alchemy, transforming failure into gold through sheer force of will. He needed two things: unprecedented financial help from the city and a major hotel brand to attach its name. He went after both with a relentless, jaw-dropping audacity. He was 27 years old. He was proposing one of the largest urban redevelopments in New York history. His pitch was a masterpiece of narrative. He told the city fathers a story they desperately needed to hear. He was not asking for a handout. He was offering salvation. His project would create jobs, restore faith, revitalize a blighted area. He positioned himself as a brave pioneer, a savior with a blueprint. He leveraged the city's desperation against it. He demanded a 40-year tax abatement, an unheard-of concession. He argued the city would get nothing from a corpse. It could get something from his phoenix. Simultaneously, he pursued the Hyatt hotel chain. They had no presence in New York. He sold them a vision of glory, a glittering flagship in the heart of the city. He promised them a transformation so complete it would defy belief. He was selling air. He was selling a future he alone could see. The negotiations were epic marathons. He bluffed. He bullied. He charmed. He played every side against the other. He became a vortex of relentless pressure. The deal was a Rube Goldberg machine of complexity. It involved the city, the state, the railroad, the bank, and the hotel chain. Any single piece collapsing would doom the whole. Trump held it together through sheer tenacity. He learned the art of the leverage play, the strategic leak to the press, the calculated outrage. He cultivated a young lawyer named Roy Cohn, a feared fixer with deep, dark connections. Cohn became his mentor in bare-knuckle tactics. Cohn taught him a central tenet: never settle, never apologize, attack, attack, attack. After years of tortuous maneuvering, the deal was sealed. The city agreed. Hyatt agreed. Financing was secured. The Grand Hyatt New York was born. The transformation was staggering. The old stone facade was sheathed in a mirror-like glass curtain. It was shiny. It was new. It was a beacon of crude optimism. 1970s grit was literally reflected away. The opening was a triumph. Politicians toasted him. The press hailed a wonderkind. He was no longer Fred Trump's son. He was Donald Trump. Manhattan developer, Fred Trump saw the result. The gleaming tower, the headlines. He finally gave the approval his son craved. In a rare moment of public praise, he said the deal was perhaps the best he'd ever seen. It was the ultimate paternal blessing. Donald had surpassed the teacher. He had not just entered Manhattan, he had conquered a piece of it on his own terms. But the victory came with a cost. It cemented a methodology, a template for all future endeavors. The template was simple: find the most distressed asset, use other people's money, secure massive government concessions, attach a glamorous brand, package it as a civic miracle, then take the credit. The Grand Hyatt was not a Trump building. It was a Hyatt on a city-supported foundation. But in the public mind, it was a Trump creation. He absorbed all the glory. He learned that the reality of the deal was less important than the story of the deal. The story was his true product. Emboldened, he set his sights higher, literally. He wanted to put his own name in the sky, not just on a renovated hotel, on a tower he could call his own. He found a parcel of land on Fifth Avenue, next to the famous Tiffany & Co. It was prime. It was precious. It was the epicenter of luxury. He envisioned a monumental residential tower, a palace in the sky for the world's wealthiest people. He would call it Trump Tower. It would be his ultimate declaration. The acquisition was another brutal fight. He needed to assemble the land from multiple owners. He employed tactics that were ruthless. He squeezed tenants, he leveraged code violations. He made life unbearable for holdouts. He was enacting the killer mentality his father preached. Sentiment was zero. The goal was everything. One elderly woman held out for years. Her plight became a minor tabloid saga. Trump was unmoved. She was an obstacle, a loser in the path of a killer. The narrative was clear. He hired the architect Der Scut. The vision was pure 1980s opulence. A soaring atrium sheathed in pink breccia pernicia marble, a waterfall, brass, glass, an interior that screamed new money. It was a temple to excess, a physical manifestation of his personality. The construction was a spectacle in itself. He pushed for speed. He bypassed conventions. He used non-union concrete workers. It caused a furor, a near riot on Fifth Avenue. He faced pickets and protests. He reveled in it. Conflict was publicity. During this period, he gave an interview that laid bare his foundation. He spoke of his father. His voice took on a rare, flat tone of respect. "My father was my teacher. He taught me that you have to be tough. You have to know what you're doing, and you have to love what you're doing." It was a telling quote. Love was in there. But toughness came first. The lesson was not about joy. It was about survival. It was about the relentless pursuit of victory at all costs. Trump Tower opened in 1983. It was an instant icon. It redefined urban luxury. Celebrities and moguls bought apartments. The atrium became a tourist destination. His own triplex penthouse, layered in gold and marble, was featured in magazines. It was a masterpiece of self-mythology. He didn't just live in the building, he was the building. His name was chiseled into the facade in stark, bold letters. Fred Trump's son was gone. The Trump brand was born. It was loud, it was aggressive, it was unforgettable. He had the tower. He had the fame. The New York press corps was his playground. He understood their hunger for copy. He fed them a steady diet of bravado and spectacle. He became a character in the city's daily drama. But a character is not enough. He wanted to be an empire. The blueprint of ambition demanded constant expansion. The Manhattan skyline was conquered. His gaze turned outward to a new frontier, a frontier of leisure and fantasy, a frontier where he could build not just buildings but entire worlds. He looked east, to the decaying boardwalks of a city called Atlantic City. Gambling had been legalized there. It was a desperate place making a desperate bet on casinos. The giants like Caesars and Bally's were moving in. Trump saw another distressed asset, another opportunity for alchemy. He would bring his gold-plated touch to the seashore. He would build the ultimate casino. It wouldn't just be a place to gamble. It would be a monument. It would be called Trump Plaza. It would be his first step into a dangerous, glittering world. The move made financial sense, but it was also symbolic. Atlantic City was a shortcut, a place where wealth was not built brick by brick over decades. It was won or lost on the turn of a card. It was a metaphor for his accelerating philosophy. Why earn when you could win? Why build steadily when you could bet spectacularly? He was leaving the solid ground of his father's brick-and-mortar world for the shifting sands of high-stakes chance. The killer from Queens was about to enter the casino. Atlantic City was a fever dream by the sea. Its famous boardwalk was lined not with families but with desperate hope. The salt air smelled of saltwater taffy and decay. This was where empires came to crumble, where fortunes were washed away with the tide. Donald Trump saw a different coastline. He saw a monopoly board waiting for his piece. He would not just enter this market, he would dominate it. His first move was Trump Plaza. He promised it would not be another garish casino. It would be the Riviera of the East Coast, a class above. The deal was complex. He partnered with the Holiday Inn Corporation. They would manage it, he would be the glittering name. He navigated the maze of gaming licenses. He presented himself as a savior again, a reliable, financially solid New York titan who would bring dignity to the gritty business. The regulators approved. The construction began. Trump Plaza opened in 1984. It was a success, immediately profitable. It proved his Midas touch could transfer from real estate to roulette wheels. The formula seemed replicable. But success in Atlantic City was a drug. One hit was never enough. The town operated on a logic of more, bigger casinos. Leisure shows, faster credit. Trump wanted more. He wanted to own the entire strip. He embarked on a breathtaking acquisition spree. He bought the nearly completed Hilton Casino from the troubled company. He renamed it Trump Castle. He then set his sights on the biggest prize of all, the Taj Mahal, a colossal half-built white elephant conceived by another dreamer. It was the largest casino project on Earth, and it was floundering. The Taj Mahal was a monument to excess before a single slot machine chimed. Its design featured minarets and domes. Its budget was a black hole. Its original developer, Resorts International, was bleeding cash. Trump saw his ultimate canvas. He launched a hostile takeover. It was a brutal public fight for control. He used debt as a weapon. He leveraged every asset he had. The Trump name was now a brand he could borrow against. He was no longer just building with money. He was building with belief. The belief of banks in his story. He won. The Taj Mahal was his. The price was staggering. Over $1 billion in debt was now layered onto his growing empire. The interest payments were a daily avalanche. But he dismissed the numbers. He saw only the symbol. The world's largest casino. The ultimate trophy. It would be his legacy in neon. He poured more money into its completion. More marble, more chandeliers, more sheer blinding scale. He was not just building a business, he was building a legend. The debt was just a detail. During these years, the persona solidified. He became a permanent fixture in the New York tabloids, not just in the business section, in the gossip pages. His marriage to Ivana, his high-profile lifestyle, his constant quotable pronouncements. He published a book, The Art of the Deal. It was a sensation. It codified his mythology. It presented his life as a series of brilliant, gutsy maneuvers. It was less an autobiography than a blueprint for success. For a hungry public, he became the embodiment of the 1980s. Greed was good, and he was its gilded poster boy. He returned to Manhattan, his confidence at a zenith. He looked at the West Side, a barren wasteland of train yards. He envisioned the greatest project of his life, Television City, later renamed Trump City, a colossal complex of towers, studios, and parks. It was a city within a city. He fought for it with epic fervor. He clashed with community boards, with politicians, with everyone. The scale of his ambition now dwarfed the island itself. He was no longer a developer. He was a visionary, a force of nature. But the cracks were beginning to show. The Atlantic City empire was a house of cards built on debt. The cash flow from the casinos was strong, but it was a waterfall trying to fill an ocean of interest payments. The New York real estate market, inflated to a bubble, began to soften. The easy money of the 80s was drying up. The banks that had once lined up to lend him billions started to look at their balance sheets. They started to ask hard questions. The music in the decade-long party was fading. He ignored the tremors. He doubled down. He bought the Eastern Airlines shuttle, renamed it the Trump Shuttle. He bought a massive yacht, the Trump Princess. He acquired the Plaza Hotel in New York for a record sum. It was the crown jewel of his collection. He stood in its oak-paneled lobby, a conqueror in his own kingdom. Every asset was a trophy. Every deal was a victory. But trophies do not generate cash. They consume it. The hotel was a beautiful, money-bleeding masterpiece. The shuttle was a capital-intensive toy. The weight was becoming unsustainable. The leverage he had mastered was now a noose. The killer mentality demanded relentless expansion. But the financial realities demanded contraction. A silent war began between the myth and the mathematics. He maintained the facade flawlessly. The brash interviews continued. The boasts grew louder. He told the world he was worth billions. The magazines listed him. He was a symbol of success. But in back offices, accountants were staring at spreadsheets that told a different, darker story. The cliffhanger was not a single moment. It was a slow, rising tide of red ink. The banks convened. They saw a collective risk. A single developer with his name on too much debt. The national economy was tipping into recession. The Atlantic City market was oversaturated. The Trump Taj Mahal opened in April of 1990. It was a spectacular event, a night of unbelievable opulence, but it opened with over $1 billion in debt. It needed to make $1 million a day just to service the interest. It was a mathematical impossibility. The house of cards began to sway. The cash flow from his other properties could not plug the holes. The Plaza Hotel was losing millions. The shuttle was a drain. The real estate market collapsed. The banks lost faith in the story. They demanded their money back. They called in loans. Donald Trump, the billionaire, faced a reality he had spent a lifetime avoiding. He could not bluff his way out. He could not bully a balance sheet. He was about to confront a word that did not exist in his father's lexicon, a word for losers: bankruptcy. The very concept was an annihilation of the Trump myth. It was the ultimate public failure. It would mean surrendering control. It would mean admitting the numbers had won. The killer would be killed by his own debt. The media, once his cheerleaders, sharpened their knives. The narrative was poised to flip, from master of the universe to cautionary tale. He stood at the edge of a financial abyss deeper than any he had ever imagined. The empire he built was about to collapse under its own weight. He looked out from his Trump Tower office. The city he conquered stretched below him, but it was no longer an empire. It was a collection of assets now owned by frightened bankers. The lessons of Fred Trump echoed: be tough, be a killer. But what happened when the killer was cornered? What happened when the winner was about to lose everything? The next chapter would not be about construction. It would be about survival. A brutal, public, humiliating fight for survival. The golden boy was about to be stripped of his gold. The blueprint of ambition had been followed to its terrifying conclusion. The quest for total victory had created the conditions for total defeat. The stage was set for the greatest performance of his life, not as a builder, but as a survivor. He would need every ounce of cunning, every shred of his father's toughness, every lesson from Roy Cohn. He would have to negotiate not for a tower, but for his own name. The descent was about to begin. Don't forget to like and subscribe as we enter the era of reckoning, the era of the comeback artist, the era where Donald Trump would face the abyss and learn that the most important deal is the one you make to save yourself.